Hello and welcome to ISO 400. I am your host, Julius Motal. This week I'm talking with Fadi BouKaram, a street photographer based in Beirut, who is also one of the founding members of Observe, an international collective of photographers who recently had their first gallery showing in Iserlohn, Germany. And Fadi recently transitioned to photographing protests in his city, and he takes a nuanced approach to protest photography that sets his work apart from everyone else's. And as always, our music is provided by Yuki Futami, a New York-based jazz musician. Thanks so much and hope you enjoy. Welcome to the show. Thanks so
Thank
much
you.
for taking the time. Finally, we could set this up.
Thanks for asking.
Yeah. What I'd like to, we've been connected on Facebook for a while now, and I've seen several incarnations of your work. And I'd like to start with the most recent stuff you've been posting, which is your protest coverage.
Yes.
From what's been happening in Beirut. So it's very much unlike what you see like online in a news article or in a newspaper. You seem to be taking sort of a street photo approach to protests, and I'm wondering, so if you could say a little bit about what the protests are about and what your approach has been on the streets while this stuff is happening.
Okay. So about the situation, it all started with in Beirut and the greater Beirut area. There's just one company for waste management. There's a lot of corruption in this country. So it has monopoly over the waste management, and then the contract expired. It wasn't going to be renewed. A lot of stuff. Basically,
sure.
Bottom line is garbage started piling up on the street. And that was 2 months ago, I think. That started 2 months ago. So people started going down on the street asking for the Minister of the Environment and the government all to go away and all that. It started little, then it started expanding because the police got a little bit rough with the protesters. So I was participating because I wanted to, but also because I wanted to take photos.
Right.
Now, when you mentioned the whole street aspect, here's the thing. I'm not a photojournalist, and I cannot claim to even have like what they have in terms of what makes them successful in their job.
Right, of course.
So, and I don't have any aspirations for my work to be published in a newspaper in terms of current events.
Right.
So I thought I do two things. One, just approach the protest the way I do street photography, which is be close to the people. I shoot close range. So we're talking like I was shooting with a 1740 millimeter lens, 17 to 40.
Right.
So that's the first one. The second thing is, before the protest, I've been in a rut, if I want to put it that way, for a little bit. So I thought maybe I'd do something different. And I was using an off-camera flash. So I was shooting with the flash.
Right.
And I'm not a flash shooter. I don't shoot flash. So I thought maybe this would be a good opportunity to actually do that because it would be acceptable. Because otherwise I kind of have issues with jumping up on people.
Right.
Not that I have issues with the flash. I mean, some people do it really nicely.
Yeah.
Not just the result, but the way they handle the people that they shoot.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So, but I don't have it. So I thought maybe the protest would be my way into approaching this kind of work, and I'm really enjoying it so far.
Yeah, and so and photography is it's not your profession. It's not what you do professionally. So you have your day job and you do photography in your free time.
Yes.
So how have you managed to balance, your professional full-time obligations and photography? Like how do you kind of make time to shoot?
Luckily, all the protests have been happening in the afternoons.
Always good.
Yeah, so all of them have happened after 6 p.m.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah, or either that or on Saturdays and Sundays, which are the weekend.
Right.
So luckily, I've been able to actually go from work, go right to the protest, change in the car, because in my work I have to be wearing a suit, and
not good for the street.
No, I tried this before. People are they are suspicious of people who are trying to take photos of them wearing suits because
Sure.
they think you're, I don't know, Secret Service or something like that.
Right.
So, not good. So yeah. So work to protest. So you lose a little bit of sleep after that, but it's okay.
It's worth it, I think.
Uh-huh.
And what? So you'd mentioned being in a rut recently.
Yeah.
What? So how did the thought come into your mind? Maybe I should try flash photography. What was the impetus behind that switch for you?
Uh, I'm trying to think of something. I think it has to do with a group on Flickr that I'm currently in. It's called Street and Repeat.
Yes, I'm aware of that
Yeah.
Facebook group.
So every couple of weeks they do instructions,
Right.
and you have to follow them. One of the instructions a few weeks ago, maybe a couple of months ago, I think, was something about the surreal or something like that. I really forgot what it's called.
Yeah.
But I thought a way to do that would be maybe I'd use a flash and drag the shutter. Drag the shutter means, you get movement.
Right.
Yeah. So I used it somewhere in an event, and I actually liked what I saw, even though I knew it was kind of like gimmicky at the time.
Yeah.
So when the protest happened, for some reason, what came to mind is the result from what I was shooting with flash. I was like, okay, let me do that. So it was as simple as that. So it was a nice coincidence. That's it.
And so, I mean, however long these protests last, when you go back to shooting on the street, not protest stuff, do you think you'll bring this flash technique you've been trying out into what you would usually do?
I do not think so. Here's the thing. One, I don't think, like I was saying, I don't think I have what it takes in terms of when I'm going to shoot people on the street with flash.
Right.
To talk to them into calming them down if they react. I don't know how to approach that. I mean, when we were in Germany a few months ago.
For your gallery show, right?
For the gallery for Observe, the collective I'm part of. And there were people from other parts of the world who joined in. Right. One of the people who did come is a Swedish guy called Johan Hjelbo. I think that's how he pronounced his last name. Jehlbo. He's part of the Full Frontal collective. It's a bunch of people, Clifton and Johan and Barry, I think his name. Well, a lot of these people, they only do flash.
Interesting.
So,
okay.
Yeah, it's called Full Frontal Flash Collective. So when he was in Germany, I saw him actually, shooting people on the street with flash. And for some reason, people just didn't react. Like they didn't have an adverse reaction.
Right.
And it was like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe it has to do with the way some people approach, they have the inner calm.
Right.
I don't. So, because when I shoot, people are usually, they get scared. I don't know. Not all, in Lebanon, I mean.
Sure.
Yeah. People don't react well to being shot at such close range. And if you add flash to it, that gets even worse.
Right. And you've photographed in a few different cities, as far as I know, because you had photographed, I think, also in the States when you were.
Yeah, I used to live there.
Yeah, you used to live there when you were going to school. And I'm wondering what has photographing in Beirut been like as opposed to photographing in the States? Like what's the difference between the environments and the way people react or don't react?
Well, and here I must admit something. It was like when I started actually shooting street, like I don't know if I should call it street, but whatever it is, that I started it in San Francisco.
Right.
The reason it was that when I moved there, San Francisco, as many know, they have a lot of homeless people.
Right.
And they have a lot of buskers, musicians playing on the street. Yeah. To me, that was new. I didn't know what it was, So, and I thought at the time that this is a worthy subject to shoot.
Sure, yeah.
And I did a lot of that, and that was before I realized that there's actually an exploitation factor to all of it. But as a beginner, I did that. And I did it with long lenses because because when I started, I was actually, I don't want to say afraid, but more like out of respect, or you want to leave these people alone, so you shoot them from far away.
Right, right.
So all the work that I did back in San Francisco are shot with a 75 millimeter lens.
Sure, yeah.
And then when I came to Lebanon, I learned to actually move closer to the people after taking a workshop with David Gibson.
Right.
So he actually did an introduction about what the good street photography is, showed us a lot of Magnum people work, and I was like, okay, it actually makes a lot more sense. And that's how, I started inching forward and getting closer to people.
And you had told me that this David Gibson workshop was kind of like a formative turning point in your photography.
Oh, hell yeah.
And if you could tell me more about the workshop, what you learned, and how that has since factored into what you do.
Okay. Well, at the time, taking a workshop as a beginner. So, like I said, whatever I did in San Francisco doesn't count for crap.
Sure.
But but I thought at the time that it was good,
Of course.
So, yeah, it's like, as a good street photographer, I need to take that workshop with David Gibson.
Right.
And it was with the Beirut street photographers. It's a group of local people in Lebanon. We're always go out and shoot together. So we took the workshop, and the first day it was actually just pure theory. No, I mean, not theory in terms of like what's photography, but a full day of actually seeing good photography by people from all over the world. Right. So that was like a big slap in the face, because I didn't know what good photography was. And I'm looking, I mean, I barely knew who Henri Cartier-Bresson was at the time, right? So I'm looking, it's like, I was in shock the whole time. And it's like, oh, so that's what they call photography. And then the next day we had to do a portfolio review. And he was really cool in that he basically took a look at what I'm doing. I was like, no, this is crap, But he didn't say these exact words.
Right, no, of course.
So that was like, bam, slap in the face. But it was awesome. And we did a lot of shooting exercises and all that. But the most important advice that he actually gave was to join the SPNC group on Flickr, which is Street Photography Now. It was SPMP at the time, Street Photography Now Project. Which is, I mentioned street and repeat, right?
Yes.
So Street Photography Now at the time, a few years ago, that was like 4 years ago, it was the what do you call it, the precursor to all of this. Like a couple of weeks, famous photographer at the time would give an instruction, and you'd shoot according to the instruction, and they'd pick 5 or something like that. So the reason he said that is, you go and join these is because you learn by being critiqued. Yeah. So, like I said, it's like giving us what other photographers do, portfolio review, telling us crap, joining Flickr, and then that's how it started for me in terms of starting to learn. Right. Because you join these peer review groups. Right. And you learn a lot from that, because you'll get a lot of criticism and critique. And eventually you'll learn to have a thicker skin. And a lot of the people make a lot of sense. Yeah.
And you no, go ahead.
No, that's it. I was saying,
and you had mentioned, so you were with a group of Beirut street photographers, and you go out and you photograph. Now, when you go outside of this recent protest stuff, I mean, do you tend to photograph with someone else or with the group, or do you prefer to photograph alone?
No, definitely alone. I love to go out in group, but it's mostly not for the photography. We always say that we want to shoot, but it ends up being a lot of walking and then eating and then drinking, But that's equally good too. You need that, because it's nice to talk with other photographers. And not just in Lebanon. I mean, even when I go to New York, because now it's been a few years that a few of the Observe members, we meet in New York. And So, and we do a lot of, shootings. And it ends up being less about the shooting and more about the eating and the drinking. And I love that.
Right.
But the regular shooting, I like to do alone.
Okay. And so if you could tell me a bit about Observe, I know you're one of the founding members. How did this all sort of come together? And what was the impetus behind forming Observe?
It started on Flickr. And it was part of the groups that I mentioned. We were in a group together. It was part of most of us were in SBNC and SBNP and all that. And there we had a private group where we were critiquing each other. And then one time Danielle Houghton, who's the only woman in our collective, and she said, "Well, since we know each other and we like each other's work and we're kind of friends, how about we form a collective?" And the reaction was like, "Hey, that's not a bad idea. Why not?" Right. So that's how it started.
And so what has I mean, how does it work? I mean, do you share work with each other? Is there like peer review type things? And then if you could tell me about your recent gallery show in Germany and how that all kind of came to be.
As you mentioned, we have a group on Flickr on our Facebook. It's the private one where we share our work and we kind of critique each other. And after knowing these people for a few years now, you kind of lose it's like you're honest naturally. You don't have to hide anything. You don't have to say, well, this is kind of good, but no, it's like you're just being honest. No, this is not good. Doesn't work.
Yeah.
So this is the advantage of knowing people for such a long time.
Right.
So the honesty of the reaction you get and you give. And talking about Germany, one of our members, his name is Michael Mai.
Yeah.
He's from Germany, from Iserlohn. So it's a town in Germany close to Dusseldorf and Dortmund over there. So he said, how about we do a show? He knows the curator of the gallery in the city. And it started as a small idea in terms of why not. And then it started kind of growing and growing. And he did the preparation almost single-handedly, Monty. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we just sent the files and they did the printing, they did the framing. We didn't, And then we met there in June, and it was far bigger than I'd even imagined. So it was really cool.
Yeah, no.
It was beautiful.
Yeah, well, I mean, the pictures from the gallery space look great.
Well, I mean, the gallery was really cool. Really beautiful. But what I mean is the actual meeting with the people, a lot of us met for the first time in person.
Right.
That was, just beyond imagination. It was really awesome.
I can only imagine. And I've seen with a lot of your work, you shoot mostly in color. I mean, I've seen some black and white shots, but it seems like most of what you do is in color. I'm wondering what's the reason? Because it's a deliberate choice you make whenever you photograph to either shoot in black and white or to shoot in color. And I'm wondering what's the reasoning for you to shoot however you shoot?
I don't think I have an answer for that, except that the way I think of it is that we shoot according to some sort of ideals that we have in our mind. And these ideals come from all the inspirations or what we've seen and past experiences and all that.
Right.
I remember seeing a lot of really beautiful photos in magazines or and I remember that it was color. They were probably Kodachrome,
of course.
The color. So this is what gets ingrained in your mind. And so it's like black and white is good.
Yeah.
It's color for me. I don't know.
No, I hear you.
I do shoot black and white, by the way, but for all the wrong reasons, which is when I can't see colors. How to say? It's a mood thing. Sometimes you get in a mood where it's like I can't see colors, and I shoot black and white, but that's not a good reason. But this is how it works for me. So
if it's what it is for you, it's what it is for you. And if we could go way back for a moment. I mean, each of us has a different reason for picking up the camera.
Yes.
At the very beginning, like for me, I kind of come from a lineage of photographers, and I kind of found a camera by accident one day, and I just started experimenting. And I'm wondering what was the reason for you picking up a camera in sort of a serious sense, not just like little snaps, but what got you into photography in the first place?
I mentioned it one time before in a written interview, I think, but it's the opposite for me in terms of we didn't have any photographers in the family. And actually, when we were growing up, there wasn't even a camera in the house.
Really?
Yeah. So it wasn't something that was important for some reason. We'd get the photos if a family member was there and they were
Sure.
shooting, and then they sent us the photos.
Right.
So from my childhood, there's not a lot of albums in terms of that. So because of the rarity of the photos, the scarcity, I guess, it's like it becomes more important. So when I kind of got older and I saw that there are few photos, and a lot of these people in the photos actually are not there anymore, I thought that it became kind of like there's an urgency to keep memory of things, to document. So that's when I bought my first camera. I think I was 21 or 22, just to try things out, and that's how photography, started making sense to me. But I have to say that from 2002 to 2011, it was just for family stuff and landscapes. So
Sure. So then, what drew you to start photographing on the street, to kind of pivot away from what was familiar, really, to what was sort of in public? What was the switch for you, and what was it like moving from, pictures of family or a landscape somewhere to like walking on the street and taking pictures of people you don't know?
Well, like I said, it was mostly about when I moved to San Francisco. It was the culture shock of actually seeing so many homeless people on the street. I mean, I know that I grew up in Beirut, and compared to like the image that people have from Lebanon, which is kind of like in the Middle East, versus San Francisco, but moving from Beirut to San Francisco, there was actually culture shock that there were so many poor people on the streets, something that we don't have in Beirut. So this is what drove me to actually start shooting these people. But then like I said, like, no, it's bad, exploitational, all that. So.
And I'm guessing for the most part, as far as learning photography, you're mostly self-taught, it seems.
Yes, it was after the workshop, David Gibson's workshop.
Right.
It was mostly through getting the critique from people on Flickr and all, and there's a lot of reading involved.
Yeah, of course.
A lot of people say that you learn by practice, which is absolutely correct. However, theory and the history of photography is really important if you want to go somewhere. I believe so.
Yeah, and so as far as texts that you have read, what have been some of the most formative ones for you?
Okay. There's one of the most important books is La Chambre Claire. It's what's it called in English? Camera Lucida.
Yes, by Roland Barthes.
By Roland Barthes. Yeah, this book is a book that I've probably read many, many, many times. Yeah, and then there's Michael Fried. Michael Fried has many books, not just one, about photography. One of the most important ones I read by him is Absorption and Theatricality. It's just pure theoretical stuff. And what else? That's a little bit, Susan Sontag, Papa George. So these people.
Okay, and also with the Gibson workshop, that workshop was one where you learned, I think I need to get closer.
Yes.
As far as not just getting physically closer, but I'm also sure changing your lens choice. And
it wasn't.
No, go ahead.
No, I'm saying, sorry. It wasn't a subtle thing where I need to get closer.
It was like you have to.
Yeah, no. He took a look at my lens. He's like, no, you can't use that. Go away.
So what was it like making that switch to go from having a considerable distance between the people you're photographing to kind of being like right here?
It took me probably a whole year to actually stop being afraid. And I'm not saying that it went away now. Not that I go and, shove the cam in people's faces. I don't do that. But before, it used to be that I used to do a lot of hip shooting,
Yes,
and I don't want to get into how good or bad people are doing, but for beginners, I think that it's really important that people don't shoot hip, because the moment you actually lift the cam and put it on your face, there's an honesty in that, towards for you and towards the subject that you're shooting. And I learned that from a lot of critiques on Flickr repeatedly. So
and I think it shows intention too.
Exactly.
When you raise it to the eye. I mean, I've shot from the hip plenty of times, and I think folks are more inclined to be a little suspicious when they see you photographing from below as opposed to like actually, actually constructing the image. Although there are advantages to shooting, it shouldn't be discounted. So have you? I mean, one of the perils of shooting on the street is the potential for conflict.
Yes.
And I have had my share of, run-ins. Someone catches you taking a photo and they don't react as, calmly or as nicely as you'd hope they'd react. And I'm wondering if has that happened for you? And if it has, how have you dealt with it or have learned to deal with it?
Yeah, it happened to me a few times. Surprisingly, in the U.S. more than in Lebanon. I don't know why, but one of the times I was shooting on the subway. I love to do a lot of shooting on the subway.
Oh, I do too. Oh man.
Mainly because of now that he passed away, but we mentioned it a few days before. Christophe Agou. His book Life Below, about people on the subway. So this is one of the what pushed me to shoot people on the subway, because it's so beautiful. Anyway, I was shooting one time in New York, and it was one of those big muscled guys, lots of tattoos, wearing wearing a wife beater. So it was kind of a scary guy, and I was shooting him. And surprisingly, it wasn't him who saw me and did the reaction. It was another guy who was a scrawny little kid, and he was like, I saw what you did. I was like, in my mind, my reaction was like, oh shit, I'm going to get beat up. But surprisingly, the guy who I was shooting didn't do anything. He didn't say anything. But the guy kept saying, this is against the law, blah, blah, blah. I was like, dude, I know the law. This is against the law. I was like, I called the cops. It's like, okay, I'll go with the cops with you. Trust me. I didn't do anything. Anyway, it went away, but it was a scary moment when the muscle guy looked at me in the eyes, but then, he turned away. He wasn't interested. So, yeah, he could have had me for lunch. So,
I'm sure. You had mentioned towards the beginning of our conversation that you had recently been in a rut, and I think anyone who has been practicing photography for any amount of time has had spells where it's not happening. Either you go out and you find nothing to photograph, or you don't even have the drive to photograph for whatever reason. And I'm wondering with you and having had creative dry spells, what have been your ways to kind of deal with those, and how do you kind of climb back out?
Here I have to say that it's obviously not my first time I've been in a rut. It's probably the fifth or sixth time in the last couple of years. And in the beginning, it's really bad, because it's not just about being a rut. It's because there are always these self-doubts in terms of, I'm a fraud. My work is worth crap. I need to delete everything. All of that. And in that area, a lot of my friends from Observe have been really helpful in terms of telling me to shut the hell up, you know.
Yeah.
Especially David Horton, who
Mm-hmm.
I've complained a lot to him, and he tells me it's
Mm-hmm.
like, get over it.
Right.
So that's one part. The other part is it helped when I'm in a rut to actually switch what I'm doing to something completely different. So
Mm.
in now, like I said, I'm shooting the protests,
Right.
but before it used to be that shooting exclusively at night, go
Mm-hmm.
back to landscapes for a little bit
Mm-hmm.
to, change the scenery. So
Mm-hmm.
it's always about doing something completely different from what you're doing to
Mm-hmm.
get back the inspiration to do the thing you like.
Yeah. So do you? So when you're so like, what's when you go out on the street? What's in your bag? Have you? I'm guessing. Do you shoot digital or do you still shoot film? What's like? And if you do shoot digital, what was the switch like from film to digital?
I started with digital.
Oh, you
I,
did start with digital.
I started with digital.
Okay.
Film came later.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, so I do have a small Canon for film, but I don't
Mm-hmm.
shoot it that much
Okay.
because I'm an impatient person, I guess. It bothers me that I have to, wait until give it out until it comes back from development.
Mm.
I'll
Yeah.
get back to that. But
Okay.
I'm shooting digital and it's mostly with the small cams. Either the Fuji X100,
Mm-hmm.
but now I ruined it, or the Olympus EM5. I do have a Canon 5D, which is like the big one. When it's okay, kind of when people don't get scared from big cameras, there are
Mm-hmm.
certain locations, like demonstrations, like in touristic places.
Mm-hmm.
So I use the big cams. Otherwise, I use like inconspicuous ones, like
Mm-hmm.
tiny.
And so you were saying you were going to get back to the thing about the film.
Yeah, it was. How to say, when I'm shooting digital, it used to be that I did a lot of, chimping, they call it. Like you go,
Yes. Oh, I
yeah.
know.
And then one time I read the interview with Gary Winogrand in that
Mm.
he used to shoot film, and not only did he not develop them, but like he'd wait a couple of years
Yeah, I don't know
to develop them.
how.
And he did that because he believed that it's better to be, how to say,
To separate yourself from,
yeah, yeah.
to
So
like,
the
yeah,
emotions of when you were shooting don't get projected into the photos.
right.
So, and I started doing that in terms of digital photography. Like I'd shoot and not look at them for at least a few months. And
Wow.
now I still have a lot of what I shot in 2014 that I don't know what it looks like.
Really?
Just because, I don't know, I was like, okay, I'll get back to it. But for
Sure.
now, I just have no interest in it.
Hmm.
So that taught me patience. And if I were to shoot film now, it doesn't bother me as much
Oh, that's
that I
good.
do it. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I mean, with digital at least, that takes some discipline.
Yeah, it takes discipline, but it would require less discipline if you shoot a lot, which
Hmm.
means that I shot today, I put them on the computer, I don't look at them. If
Hmm.
I shoot again tomorrow, I'll just forget about those. So it's about the shooting more than it's about the results. So just like whatever.
Hmm.
Keep shooting and you don't care what you shot. So.
I think that's a good way to approach it. And you, I'd seen, maybe it was a month or 2 months ago, you had posted a series of images that are kind of the theme that runs through them is water.
Yes.
And if you could tell me more about how the idea kind of is it you were shooting and then you realized that there was this theme running through these images, or did you have an idea? I want to photograph things related to water. Like, how did that all kind of come together?
Uh, one of the one of the places I like shooting at the most in Beirut is by we call it the Corniche, like the boardwalk.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a couple of kilometers by
Mm-hmm.
the water.
Mm-hmm.
And during the spring, a lot of people go in there and just jump into the water. They'd be like, I don't know, 10 meters high.
Mm-hmm.
And water is just like the sea is an area where I'm very comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
I'm definitely not alone at this.
Right.
So, and going there a lot, like almost every weekend, I spent a couple of days there. and suddenly the theme emerged of water and calmness, sereneness, or serenity. Sorry,
Oh, yeah.
that. So it started piling up as a project, and so far I'm enjoying it. So,
Yeah.
but that's it. It's just from the geographical convenience of shooting by the water. That's it.
Okay. And one of the things I noticed too, you're one of the few photographers I know who doesn't have a dedicated website.
Yes.
You have your portfolio on the Observe website, and you also have your Flickr page. And I'm curious,
Yes.
what's the reason for not that you
I wish.
have to, but
Yeah, I wish I had like some, good reason for that other than
okay.
I'm lazy. That's it. I mean, I started doing one, I think with format, yeah, but then I didn't finish it. I mean, eventually I want to do one, you know, because it doesn't make sense to not have a dedicated place where, you talk about, no, you show your work. I mean, I do have like a blog,
Right.
which in 2 years, I've done 3 posts. Yay for productivity. So, but I'm doing one tomorrow, so I'm
Okay.
committed. So I'm
Good.
publishing one tomorrow.
All
So.
right, I'll keep an eye out for it. And so since photography is not it's not your work,
Yes.
having it sort of be the thing you do in your free time has it? I'm guessing there's a certain sense of purity in that not doing it professionally, you're able to kind of keep it fresh for yourself. And I'm
Yeah.
wondering if that's the case for you.
That's definitely the case for me. I've actually had a few offers to publish in newspapers and magazines here,
Really?
and yeah, and it was something for a kind of like projects. They'd asked me to do projects, and it's not that I'm being obnoxious or anything, but I've refused them because I really don't need the pressure to do anything like that. I have my job, so financially, my job keeps me from, it's okay. So I, how to say, I'm not good with pressure. So I don't need the pressure to actually shoot for a project and needing this amount of time and all that. So I don't need that. So for now, I'll just assume that whatever I do doesn't matter and it's online and it's
Yeah.
it's all good now. If at a later stage, which I mean, it's one of my goals. At one point, my goal is to actually do a book, but it's something specific book. But for
Yeah.
now, I can't handle the pressure. So
Yeah. Was there ever an impetus? Did you ever have the thought at one point to try and make it a professional career, or has it always been just something you did in your free time?
it was always something that I did in my free time. But there's a thing, and from until probably 2012, like the first year or so,
Yeah.
it was that I'm an engineer. I'm an engineer who also does photography,
Right.
right? And but after that, it became I'm an engineer and I do photography. Now, I really have no qualms of saying that I'm a photographer who
Huh.
supports himself by doing some other thing. So it's an identity thing that now, for me, I identify as a photographer. The other part is just for to be able to buy cameras. That's it.
Right. So this is something I've asked. I've occasionally asked people, like, when did you feel comfortable calling yourself a photographer? So when did that moment happen for you? Like, where were you in the arc of your photography that you felt comfortable saying, I am a photographer?
It was at some point in 2014 that I actually realized that I'm a photographer. Why? Because it started making sense that I'm only happy when I'm doing photography. I don't want to say that I'm unhappy, but when I'm doing my other job, it lost the passion. I don't have that much passion for it anymore
Right.
compared to what I do as a photography. So just in case some of my coworkers are watching this, I don't mean I don't like my job, but it's
Yeah.
just doesn't compare well to what I do as a photographer.
That's something I ask folks in all of these interviews, and it's tailored to the photographer's experience. If you could give one piece of advice to someone who's looking to get into or is just starting in street photography, what would that piece of advice be?
It's an easy, let's say, it's an easy way to say it, but it's hard to apply it, which is check your ego at the door. Because when you start, you have to know that whatever likes or faves you're getting on Facebook or Flickr, if you realize that these don't reflect your true worth, I don't mean that you're worth more. I mean you're worth less than whatever faves you're getting. Because when you start, these can be deceiving because you think it's like, oh, this is good. It's like, no, this is not good.
Right.
Yeah. So join a lot of peer review critique groups because people are forced to be honest there. They're not your friends in terms of they don't have to give you likes that you don't deserve.
Right.
And yeah, it's not tit for tat. You give them likes, they they just want to be honest, and they'll give you good critique. Hopefully.
Hopefully. Oh,
Yeah.
always, always,
Yeah.
hopefully. Well, thanks so much for taking the time to do this. This has been great.
That went quickly for me, so that's good. Yeah.
Thanks so much for watching. This has been ISO 400. If you'd like to see more of Fadi's work, you can go to observecollective.com/Fadi-BouKaram, or you can go to flickr.com/Cedrus-K. That's CEDRUS-K. And if you like what we do, please hit subscribe down below and share this with your friends. Thanks so much, and see you next time.